And welcome back to Out Chicago. Scott Duff here, along with Ellen Miller. Rolling along. Actually, we're steamrolling along today.
Steam coming out of our ears.
Steam. Look, these are kooky pants times. And again, I always go back to my moral barometer, Fred Rogers, who always says, in these times, look for the helpers.
That's right.
And I can't think of the LGBT National Help Center provides vital peer support, community connections, and resource information through helplines and online chat rooms. And joining us now is founder and president of the LGBT National Help Center, Brad Becker. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
We're so glad that you're here. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you've been listening. I haven't taken a breath in about 40 minutes. So for our listeners who might not be aware, what is the history of the LGBT National Help Center?
Yeah, so we've been around 28 years, and what we do is provide support for people very often who are feeling very isolated throughout the country and sometimes internationally, people who are dealing with issues around sexual orientation and or gender identity and expression. We often speak with people who are first coming out and have never spoken to anyone before. We do this through a series of hotlines that we offer, as well as online chat and moderated chat rooms for young folks to be able to talk. So we do that in a number of ways. What we're obviously hearing now are from a lot of people who are very, very scared about what's been going on since the election, and so we're dealing with a lot of frightened people.
Yeah. But can I ask, what was the impetus 28 years ago? Because it was your idea.
Yes, and I was fortunate to put together a great group of people to help me with that. I had originally started as a volunteer when I lived in New York City at the local LGBT hotline, which is now a part of our work. And that particular New York hotline is the oldest LGBTQ hotline in the world, it's over 50 years old.
Wow.
So I started volunteering there and saw that many of our calls were coming from all over the country, even though we were really a local New York hotline. And so it kind of was the impetus to start to look into, would it be feasible to start a national hotline? And we did, obviously. And when we started looking into it, we undertook a study to see, well, how many other local hotlines were out there and what kind of work were they doing? And we found that there were about 150 local hotlines, LGBTQ hotlines, and they varied greatly. Some of them only gave resources, some of them only gave peer support, some of them gave advice. So we kind of spent about a year and a half figuring out what we wanted to do and whether there were enough communities that weren't being served to warrant this, and we found that there were. Interestingly and sadly, we've undertaken another survey a few years ago to see, well, how many local queer hotlines still exist, and it's under 10, down from 150. So a lot of fewer resources for that service because it's incredibly labor intensive to make sure that you always have enough volunteers. It's always ongoing training, and it's rough for volunteers. You're talking to people who are going through really difficult situations. So we found that more and more there's a handful of hotlines, most of them national now in scope, that provide this support.
So, Brad, you mentioned so many people are calling now. We're in these troubled times. What are you telling them to ease their minds?
That's such a good question. I wish there were an easy answer, Owen.
Right.
I know. That's why I gave it to you, because you're the one on the front lines.
Well, thank you. One of the things we want to do is not blue sky it. And we're certainly not going to say to people on the phones, oh, don't worry, this is nothing, it will blow over. But what we are trying to help people do is slow down this sense of panic and to kind of take a breath, take it one step at a time. We're still learning a lot of things about what may happen. We're still understanding where there are going to be lawsuits and court challenges, and we're starting to see those happening now. How that will play out over time, we don't know. But one of the main things we're stressing is that we are all in this together, and that each of our callers are not out there alone. Each of them are part of a very strong community. We've been through very troubling times in our past. And we've gotten through them, and we know that we will get through this, but it's going to be a tough number of years, and we're not sugarcoating that. But we're here for each other, and our organization is here for them as well as many other organizations. And let's stick together and lean in and be strong. And that's the message that we're trying to convey to people.
Thank you for
Brad,
that.
my blood pressure is already dropping right now.
Yes.
Thank you. You've just reminded me of what I try to preach is like, don't panic, don't panic, you know? And right now I think my anger is coming across as panic. And I guess I'm not panicked because I do believe that there are people like the folks at the LGBT National Help Center who are, like I said, Fred Rogersing it up, just being the helpers. What sort of resources and services does the LGBT National Help Center provide?
Well, I think if we boil it down to two main things, it's peer support. It's person-to-person talking to people about the fears that they may have, about the issues that they have. I think it's important to remember that during this particularly rough time, we're still dealing with all the things that we always have been before. We're still dealing with the 14-year-old who is struggling to come out. We're still dealing with people dealing with relationship issues. So all of that is still happening. And then layering on top of this is all of this new stuff that's happened since the election, and that contributes obviously to people's fears, and there's quite an overlay between those things. So we're dealing with a lot. We talk with people one volunteer to one caller at a time. And the other main thing that we do is we've developed what's become the largest LGBTQ resource database in the world. We have over 19,000 local resources, almost all within the United States. So in times like this, when people do feel very alone and very scared, we're able to utilize that database to say, you know, there is a support group that might be near to your area. There might be a way to just be socially involved with people so that you're not isolated. There may be professional counselors. There may be, we have all sorts of information. So we're able to very quickly find resources when they exist near someone so that in addition to talking with us, they can sit together with other people and form those bonds and be supportive be support for each other. So I think that's a very important component of what we offer as well.
Yeah, especially like finding people in real life, as IRL, as they say, because as a culture, we become so as you said, isolated. We are on our phones, on our computers. We are away. But I think one of the best way to ease anxiety is to find community. And if you're able to find a safe space and to be with like-minded folks, that really will help allay a lot of folks' fears.
Very true. And I think one of the things that we're also kind of talking to people about when they are in this sense of understandable kind of panic is thinking about where they're getting information from right now, where they're spending their time. And social media can be very useful, but social media can also be sometimes not the best place to be in a time like this. And so for some callers, we're talking to them about is being on social media constantly helping you.
Right.
And I think that when there's a lack of very specific information, people will fill that hole with information that isn't always accurate or that just stirs the fear even more. So for some people, it could be a matter of stepping back a bit and giving themselves a bit of a break. It doesn't mean being completely disconnected, but maybe not spending 4 or 5 hours a day, doom scrolling online. So we're talking about that, and that also, I think, connects them to where are there places where you can actually sit with other people, get a cup of coffee, go for a drink, do whatever it is, and just talk and be supportive for them and have them be supportive for you in real life. And that can be very helpful too.
Brett, are you finding that people are calling more from let's say, red states or areas outside of, big cities like Chicago and New York and LA, or is it just, is it disproportionate or is it equal?
It is not equal. It is, if you hold up the classic maps that they showed during election times of the red and blue states, and that's kind of where you can find our callers, and that's not really surprising. It's not to say that we also don't get calls from big cities too, but it's mostly from states where there are already attempts, and sometimes successfully, to other our community. And so this just further makes it a more frightening place. And so we do get a lot of our calls from small, rural, conservative, religious areas where people don't feel welcome to begin with. And now this is just an added layer of that.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
That's kind of
We don't have much time left, but I was wondering, I'm assuming that, social media is a great tool. I'm assuming that you use social media to reach out, to get the word out. Have you noticed a change in your reach?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've noticed more and more people availing ourselves of our messaging on social media, and one of the things that we're trying to do is give out that message of stay strong. We're also giving resources not only for ourselves but other organizations that can be helpful to people, so that they feel that there's something tangible they can do. One of the other big things we're seeing is that a lot more people are coming to us and asking to volunteer. We are primarily an all-volunteer organization, and people want to do something. And I think a lot of people, when these things happen, can feel stuck. And so whether it's volunteering with us, whether it's volunteering with other organizations, getting out of your shell and that fear and tangibly doing something not only benefits the community at large, but it benefits yourself.
Yep.
And so that's something that we're communicating on social media about, and it's really, I think, resonating with people.
Amazing. And I think you are, if I'm correct, you're based in San Francisco. Is that correct? Or
we're at this point, we're pretty much virtual. We've taken advantage of the technology to be able to have volunteers spread out all across the country.
That's what I was getting to. Yeah.
Yes. And that's tremendously helpful, because I think there's nothing better than a caller being able to talk to a volunteer who has lived that same life in a town like they may have, that they're living in.
Yeah.
So we're not having this bubble of our volunteers are in San Francisco, our callers are everywhere but.
Right.
So, if people are interested in volunteering with us or with other groups, they can go to our website at lgbthotline.org. And there's a lot of information about our services. There's information about how to volunteer with us, to look up information on other organizations that might need help. So I would really encourage people to look at our website, and that's kind of a gateway to all of the services that we provide. Amazing.
Brad Becker, founder and president of the LGBT National Help Center. Again, it is lgbthotline.org. If you want to find out information about the hotline, resources, and volunteer opportunities. Brad Becker, thank you so much for taking time out today to join us, and thank you for the very important work you are doing right now.
Thank you so much, Brad.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.